Hi, everybody. Thank you so much. I apologize for that little adjustment. No one's there. Everybody's upstairs. I'm sorry, guys. Someone just came in. As I was saying, I want to again thank the library for inviting me back. And what we're going to do tonight is an actual water bath canning demonstration. But before I begin, for those of you that have never heard of water bath canning or any type of canning, let me just go over the procedure with you and explain to you why we do it. We water bath fruits that are acid as far as the pH is concerned, or we water bath can things that we pickle with vinegar that has 5% acidity that will lower the pH of the vegetable from an alkaline that has to be pressure canned to an acid that we can safely water bath can. And there is a multitude of recipes that you can follow. You can can any type of fruit. You can make jellies, jams, pie fillings, and they will last several years on your shelves in your pantry. Now, years ago, when there were two major competitors for making the candy jars and the lids, and those companies were Balls and Pears, and they used to say that those lids were safe to use for several years. But now that those two companies merge, they are recommending that you only use the lids on the top of the jars for only 18 months. So let me show you. This is a ring. This is the actual canning lid, and I'll go closer so you can see it. It has a rubber circle around it, and that is what comes in contact with the jar so that it seals properly. Now, this is a pint jar, and that's what we're going to be using today. But Balls and other manufacturers make a lot of different sizes, from several ounces to a half a pint to a pint and a half, a quart, 2 quarts, and even a gallon for things like if you want to pickle pickles, cucumbers. Okay, so today we're going to be canning pears. And this is a season for some of you that have fruit trees to be harvesting your pears, okay? Now, I already prepared them for the sake of saving some time. So if you look right over here to my counter, you'll see that I have 8 jars already prepared. But I'm going to show you, for demonstration purposes, how you do it so that when the time comes, you won't be confused, okay? And then I'm going to actually process the food in the water bath canner. And while the food is processing, I'll take your questions if you should have any. So now, let's get back to the jars. You want to make sure that your jars are inspected by you and that they don't have any cracks, chips, or nicks in them, okay? And if they do, I'm sure it's just common sense will tell you to discard them, because you don't want to have anybody in your house digesting any small fragments of glass. So our jars have been inspected, and now I need to tell you that they have been washed with hot soapy water and rinsed, and you need to sanitize them, and you can do that by several ways. One way to do it is right in your dishwasher. If you have the heat drying element in your dishwasher, that'll be perfect. Also, you can sanitize them by immersing the jar into hot boiling water, but you still have to wash them with soap and water, and then put them in boiling water and then remove them. And you would remove them with a jar gripper. And here is a jar gripper. And I hope you can see that well. It has wooden handles here, and then a rubber surrounding the wire that you will squeeze together. And when the water is hot from the water bath canner, the wire will retain that heat, and the rubber around here will mold and fit to the jar. And you see, this is porcelain towel down here, and I'm not afraid to swing it back and forth. And I'm not recommending that you do that with hot food, but I want to demonstrate that is the thing that I find that most people are nervous about with canning, is when it's time to take the jars out of the hot water. But it won't fall because this has been developed ergonomically to hold the jar, even when it's full of hot boiling food. The next thing I want to share with you is, of course, we're going to pretend that I filled the jar, and all of the equipment that you see I'm using has been sanitized with soapy dishwater suds and then immersed into boiling water. So you want to make sure that everything that you're working with, all your utensils, are clean at all times. Even though the product is going to go in the canner, and I'll share that with you in a minute, and we're going to make it get to a rolling boil, and it will destroy bacteria in the process. But you don't want to have the water bath canner have to work so hard, in other words. Okay, so here's a funnel. Everybody can see that? Great. And let's just pretend that I have a bowl here that was full of fruit that I already cooked and prepared, and I put it in here. Now, I am on a sodium and salt restricted diet, so there's no salt in the food that I can, and there's no sugar because I'm pre-diabetic. So a lot of people think that you just have to preserve food in a very unhealthy way by adding a lot of sugar. I'm here to tell you today that is one of the main reasons why a lot of people with health issues like me can, because we want to be thoroughly assured that we're eating healthy food. So these pears were only cooked in water and the natural juice that the pears had, okay? So now we're pretending that we filled it up, and this piece of equipment is a ladle, and then you just simply put the food into the jar. The next thing that you will do is you want to take some paper towel, and I have some 5% vinegar here. And always remember this, because we're getting ready to sanitize the lid or the rim of the jar so that we can put the lid on. Always remember, don't let the vinegar touch the paper towel, because if there's bacteria here, you're putting bacteria on the paper towel and you're defeating your whole purpose. So you want to add a few drops, you see it coming out? And then you want to just wipe the rim around the jar. Now, in the case of these pears, I know it's very easy for me to remove any germs that are on the lid. One, because it only contains water and natural pear juice. But if you added a lot of sugar to your pears, sugar attracts bacteria, it's sticky, so you want to make sure that you wipe. Now, you don't have to worry about this area in here, because this part will not come in contact with the food and it will go in the canner. And then the next thing that you will do is, let's see, where's my magnetic?
Do you mind putting the jar closer to the camera so we can see where we shouldn't? Do you mind bringing the, yeah.
I'm moving in a little closer.
Okay.
I thought that was okay. Okay, so can you see that now, guys? I'll get closer.
Okay.
You want to fill it right there between these two lines with the liquid. Okay? Everybody see that? And the only thing that you have to concern yourself with wiping is right here. You see where my finger touched? The rim, now we all have natural oil in our skin that our sebaceous glands secrete. So even if you touch something and maybe you sanitize your area, you still may have oil on your skin. So you want to wipe that off just around that rim, okay? Because this lid will come in contact with that. Now, I'm not going to can this one. I already have one ready, but I just want to share that with you. The next thing we're going to do, excuse me for a second. I have to pick up the magnet. And I'm washing, and this is a magnet that will pick up this lid. I'll demonstrate it here. Can you all see that? Now, over here in this pot, I have water that came to the boil, and then I let it simmer. You don't have to boil the lids for 5 minutes like our moms and grandmothers did. They don't make them like that anymore. You only have to get it pretty warm. So I'm going to pick one up. See that? And I'm going to come closer to the camera so that you can see, and you just place it on top. Okay? Then the next thing you do, and you don't have to worry about if this came in contact with anything because it's not going to touch the food. You put it right there on top, and then you're just going to screw it on finger tight. Now, you see how I screwed it on? I didn't go with all my strength. It's very easy to take this top off. You need to have that on kind of loose so the water can boil and raise up and let any air out of the jar, and then it'll vacuum suck that lid close and let it seal. Did everybody get that? Can you turn on their microphones in case there's a question at this time, please?
When do you label the jars? Do you label them before the canning or after?
No, afterwards, and we'll get to that afterwards. You never label before because if you put it in boiling water, it's just the label's just going to be floating around in the can. And then if you put, and it's not a silly question, you know, it's good to know. And I appreciate your question. It's a great question. And if I came across sarcastic, I wasn't meaning to. And you also can just put the date, and there's like, let me show you closer. See right here, there's you can see for a date where you can put the date, the month, the day, and the year. Most canners like me, we just put the month and the year. And you don't really have to label what's inside it if you can visibly see it and you know those are pears. I personally don't label mine. I just put the date and the year because I can see what it is. But if I'm, say like I'm pressure canning and I'm pressure canning something that has meat in it, or I'm pressure canning greens that have a lot of jalapeno peppers, I may say collard greens, hot, something like that. But I don't do the peel and stick labels because I don't use my labels, pardon me, I don't use my lids but one time. I do know that my mom and my grandmother and a lot of people in this room right now probably know somebody that reuses the lids. I don't. Balls recommends that you do not reuse the lids. So do I throw the lids away? No. I do a lot of crafts. I have my own natural hair and skincare line. I make candles and honey that I sell on my website. So I use those lids for various other projects, but I don't reuse the lids for water bath candy. If there's another question, I'll take it at this time pertaining only to what we've gone over. And if there isn't a question, I'll move on and I'll demonstrate what the canner looks like to you.
Can you explain again what you did with the lids? You put them in water that had been boiling? Is that the lids? You took them out of water?
What I did with the lid when I put it on the jar?
Yeah, just before you took it out with the magnet, had you put that in hot water?
Yes, they're in hot water. You can see this induction heat here, and you can see the steam coming off of it. But you don't want to boil it so that you boil away the rubber around the lid. They used to do that years ago, but they've made it better now. Well, all you have to do is warm it up.
Just warm it. Okay. Thank you.
Great question. Anybody else?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so you said you don't add any sugar or anything else. You just let it basically cook in the juice. Does it last as long as the ones with all the sugar and everything in it?
Oh, yes. As a matter of fact, it will last longer because the perfect breeding place is a dark, damn, sweet, sugary space. Okay? So the more sugar you have, the more chance you have of it not lasting as long or becoming contaminated. Okay. So I'm sure you've purchased fruit cocktail in the can from the store in its own natural juices, peaches in the can at the grocery store in its own natural juices, and pears. And you also can just process them in distilled water. If you are, say, someone who is insulin dependent and type 1 diabetic, I'm pre-type 2. I'm not diabetic yet because I control it with my diet and what I eat, okay? I don't eat salt and a lot of sugar or carbs, okay? But I'm getting off topic, but I want to just let you know that if you have someone in your family that is pre-diabetic and they're trying not to get on medication or insulin, this would be a great thing for them to do. And let me just share this with you. I think it's ridiculous how some products in the store don't have sugar in it, cost more than the sugary products that have the corn sweeteners, corn syrup, that, you would think because it has less ingredients, it would be cheaper, but it's not. Mm-hmm. The healthier the product is, the more it costs. It's crazy. That's why I love canning. And by the way, if you don't know, I have a natural organic food forest where I have over 40 fruit trees that I'm growing in a regular, maybe just a little bit larger suburban backyard. So I grow pears, apples, plums, strawberries, elderberries, muscadines, grapes.
Yeah, I know. I follow you.
Okay, persimmons. Yeah. So if you know somebody, thank you. So if you know somebody that's growing a lot of fruit and vegetables, encourage them to preserve it. Okay. So that, and it's good to give food away, but it's also wonderful that you can preserve it where I can enjoy these pears all year long. Okay, are there any more questions?
Thank you.
Okay. Now, let's move on. I've shown you how to prepare the jars. I didn't think it was necessary for me to go into a long detail about how I cook the pears. It's simple. And you can follow any recipe that you pick up on YouTube or Ball's Canning Recipe books. Amish have a beautiful book on home preservation, and the government has a home preservation website that you can go to. But it's simple. You just peel the food, wash it, peel it, cook it. You can sugar it down if you want to, or like I said, use vinegar to acidify vegetables to make pickles. Now, so I told you how we remove the jars. There's only one thing I didn't share with you, and I need to do that at this time. Before we put the lid on, this is a spatula. Some foods that you put in the jar will have a lot of bubbles. I don't need to do what I'm getting ready to share with you, debubble this, because you don't see any bubbles. When you have a lot of liquid, thin liquid, you don't get bubbles. But if you're canning something like mixed fruit, applesauce, or something like that, you may have to go down to the side of the jars. And if you see any bubbles, just press down on the side of the jar and remove the bubbles, and they'll come to the top. Okay? Now, I'm not going to use this one to can, so I don't want you to worry about me contaminating anything. Everybody with me? Okay. Now, this is the canner. It's made out of aluminum. Everybody see that? It's very inexpensive. It's very lightweight. We're going to put it on the stove. And this is what's so important. If you have cold food, and this is cold food, or room temperature food. You cannot put it in a water bath canner that is boiling with water in it or has boiling water. You must put cold or room temperature food in a cold or room temperature canner. So I'm just beginning to turn that on. Everybody got it? No cold food in hot water. If you do that, your jars will crack and you'll have a mess. And the same rule applies to if you have hot food. Let's say these pears just came out of the pot that you cooked them in, and you had sugar or whatever in it, cinnamon, whatever you did, and you packed them hot. You cannot put them in a canner that has room temperature or cold water. The same thing will happen. It will crack. So you put room temperature with room temperature food with room temperature water, or you put hot food in a canner that has hot water. So this is room temperature water. I just turned it on. Here is the rack that goes inside of the canner. I'm coming closer so you can see it. And now if you follow me, right here it rests. See that little indentation? See that arm? It rests right there. And at this time, I can add my jars, my plant jars, to the canner. And I have the canner on high. You want to make sure that your jars are not touching. You want to make sure that your canner is full, because you don't want to put 2 or 3 jars in, and during the process, when you put the top on, you don't see it, they all lean over. So always make sure that you fill the canner completely. I need a little jar. Okay. So now, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This canner can take 8 jars. I intentionally made sure that I didn't have enough. So I want to share with you what you do when you don't have enough to fill your canner. What you're going to do is fill this up with water. You don't have to worry about sanitizing it because you're not going to eat this. Put you a lid and a cap on, finger tight. Now, your canner is balanced. Can everybody see that? Can you see the canner? Okay. Now, this is something that I learned from my grandparents. If you want to keep your jars pretty, when I say pretty, I mean they're clear. If you add a little vinegar every time you water bath can or pressure can, that'll help keep your jars from getting cloudy. But this is the key. You cannot put the vinegar directly on the tops because the vinegar is acidic and it will turn the jars tops real dark. So I'm going to take 1 jar out, and I'm just going to drop a little of the vinegar. Can you hear it? Then we'll put it back in, and that's going to keep my jars uncloudy, or as I like to say, pretty. Okay?
Was that about 1 ounce of vinegar?
I don't give it any details. A teaspoon, tablespoon.
Okay.
It doesn't matter as long as you put a little bit in there.
Okay, thank you.
Because this is a 4-ounce jar. I didn't put 1 ounce in here because I used some of it to clean the rim, and you see how much is left.
Right.
So I would
Okay.
say a teaspoon would be sufficient.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
Now, you're welcome. And that was a good question too. You can tell I'm one of those people that I don't measure. I cook by instinct. yesterday I made not corn muffins, but muffins. And so since I don't use cornmeal or flour, I use coconut flour, almond flour, and almond milk, because I wanted to have a little grit to it so it could be like almost like cornbread. And then I added a can of coconut milk because I'm lactose intolerant, 3 eggs, about a teaspoon of baking powder, a pinch of baking soda, and a little swerve natural sweetener. And I just heat it up, mix it up, and I put about a tablespoon or 2 of olive oil, to make the muffins kind of moist. And then I just put them in the little cupcake, holders with the little tissue paper, and just fill them up. I just cook by instinct. Okay? All right. So now we're gonna let this heat, and I can see. Can anybody see that steam coming up there? So now I'm gonna take the handles, and I hope you can see me. I'm gonna take the handles, and I'm gonna lift it up a little bit, and I'm gonna immerse it all the way in the water. Now, this is the thing. You must completely cover the jars with water. So I need to add water. Now, this is very important. You want it to cover at least 1 inch or 2 inches above the rims of the jars, okay? So I already put me some water in this pot right here, so it's room temperature, and I'm gonna add some more water. I'll put my finger down there, and it's about right there, about 1.5 inches, 2 inches of water. So I'm gonna add just a little bit more. I'll put it all. And now, I'm gonna wait until it comes to a boil. And you can put the top on it, or you don't have to put the top on it. And wait until it comes to a boil, and then I'll set my timer for 15 minutes, okay? So now, while I'm waiting on that to come to a boil, are there any questions? And I'm one of those people that clean up as I go. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, I have a question.
Okay.
When you set your jars in the pot, initially, they were lifted up and then you set them down in the water. Is that absolutely necessary? You can't just sit them all the way down? I mean, I know they're on the
rack.
The rack. I know they're on the rack, but can the rack sit all the way down into the bottom of the water while it's warming up to come up where the steam?
You can, but the rack, having the handles on the side, keeps it stable into position. So if you put the rack down, it'll move. So I like to put it loaded with the rack up, because the arms have a position. They're leaning over here and here, so the jars don't fall over while you're loading it.
Okay, so I asked that because I don't think my rack has.
You put your hand in the water and turn them back up, but why do that when you don't have to?
I asked because I don't remember offhand. I'm not looking at it, but I don't think my rack has the arms on it. I think it's just a flat, round rack that sits in the bottom.
But then if you have that kind of rack, like in most of the pressure canners,
yes,
then it's level and it has metal all the way around it. It has little slots for the water to come through. That's stable.
Okay.
So you can load one here and one here, and it won't turn over because it'll stick to the bottom.
Okay.
But when it's a real flimsy rack like that one, no. And another thing I need to share, I'm glad you asked that question, because the reason why you should not can without a rack is the jars will crack if they are brought to a boiling temperature too quickly, and the aluminum metal holds the heat in the jar. So you need to have a little cushion. So if for, let's say you found a water bath canner at a garage sale and they didn't have the rack, you can put some dishcloths at the bottom of that pot and set your jars on the dishcloth.
Okay.
But
Thank
you have
you.
to have something in between the metal of the bottom of the canner and the glass.
Thank you. Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Oh, I have a question.
Yes.
This Miss New Englander. I want to know if the item you were canning had a lot more sugar. Does that matter how long you let it sit in the hot water? If it was a sugary item, like really syrupy,
No, it'll be the same amount of time.
same amount of time. Okay.
You just need to follow a basic recipe or go to the government's food preservation site, like I said, or BALLS or the Amish book. There are a lot of books. If you're following a specific recipe, I recommend that you do the standard processing time that they recommend.
Yes.
But if you go to the government site, it's not going to give you a whole lot of explicit directions. It'll just tell you process carrots. I'm just going to make this up. 10 minutes. I should have said carrots because that's water bath canning. Pressure canning. Let's just say apples, 10 minutes. Blueberries, 5 minutes. Whatever, you follow that.
So the sugar content.
It's really not about how much sugar in there.
Okay.
Only when you're making a jam or a jelly and you're adding things like sure gel or pectin, that's when it will become significant. But today, I'm just giving you the basics.
Okay.
So going forward, if you want to make something real sugary, I would recommend you follow the recipe to the T. And especially when it comes to making pickles, because pickles are usually made out of vegetables. I know people pickle peaches and apples and things like that too, but most pickles are vegetables based. So you must follow the direction to a T so that it'll be acidic enough to safely can through the water bath canning method and destroy the bacteria that will multiply if it's some still in that jar. Okay?
Thank you.
So I'm going to check my canner and then I'm going to tell you a little bit about pressure canning so that you would know the difference. Okay? And I see some steam coming up, so it's trying to boil. I'll check 5 minutes. I'll check. If somebody help me with my time and remind me, the moderator, to check it in 5 minutes. Okay?
Yes, ma'am.
My moderator's still there, my host?
Yep, I'll remind you in 5 minutes.
Yeah. Let me know in 5 minutes. Okay, now let's talk about pH. Potential hydrogen in food, products, chemicals, water, anything. A neutral pH is 7. I'm just going to give you some of my cosmetology background. 7 is the pH of baby shampoo. That's why it doesn't sting your baby's eyes, because it's the same pH. But a good healthy shampoo is 4.5 to 5.5. So I hear a lot of grown women talking about they use baby shampoo thinking it's gentle when it's not. It's harsher for your hair, but it's good for babies in case it gets in their eyes. Okay, so that's when you think about neutral. Most vegetables are 7.1 to 14 on the pH scale, meaning they are alkaline. Bacteria cannot be destroyed in them through water bath canning unless it is made acidic with vinegar and brought back down to an acid. Everybody with me? I'm used to people reacting out loud, so look over me. So now, fruits are anywhere from 6.9 on down. They don't go to 0, but things like real acidic things like lemons, grapefruit, citrusy things, oranges, limes, pomelos, those type of things can be real low on the pH scale and you don't have to worry about it. They will process really good in a water bath canning method and you don't have to worry about botulism or bacteria surviving as long as you can them for the recommended time, the water bath can them in the boiling water for the recommended time. Now, when you're dealing with meat, or anything that has meat in it, even if it's fruit with meat, for example, tomatoes are fruits. They're normally acids, but there are some hybrids. Those of you that are gardeners, there are some hybrids that go a little bit more to the alkaline side. Okay, so you have to be careful. And that's why when we water bath can tomatoes, we follow a specific recipe where we add lemon juice, citric acid, or a little vinegar. Follow the recipe and you can still safely water bath can it. All right, but now I'm getting ready to do some pasta sauce with my huge tomatoes that I was grew in my food forest and put in my freezer because it was too hot in North Texas to be canning anything. Okay, now I'm going to can those tomatoes, peppers, onion, garlic, maybe a little chopped up eggplant with ground turkey. So even though the tomatoes are acid, and that's the majority of the ingredients in the pasta sauce, that meat is automatically going to put it on the alkaline side, and it must be pressure canned. So if you're taking notes, anything with meat, even if it's acid, must be pressure canned. That's the point I'm trying to make. Okay? And all vegetables, unless they are pickled and you do a direct, explicit recipe, every other vegetable has to be pressure canned because it's alkaline. Anything that is reduced with acidity from vinegar can be water bath canned. Okay, are there any questions now?
Before the next question, you have 30 seconds before you want to check your pots.
Okay. Oh, you're telling me. I can check it. Okay. It's not boiling. About 3 more minutes. Is there a question? There are no questions? I don't know how much you got on that camera. Can you still hear me?
Yes, we can still hear you.
Okay, so there's no question.
Mm-mm.
Okay, well then I'm just gonna take a seat and I'll come back when the food is boiling, okay? I'll take my little 67-year-old self and sit down.
Are you going to take questions on anything besides what you're doing now?
Yeah, I'll take any question.
Okay, so I was in one of your lives and you were talking about okra water. And so I was trying to get an understanding. So you just get your fresh okra out of your garden, you chop it up, you just put it in some water and let it like sit overnight.
Room temperature water on your counter overnight.
Okay.
I have some on my counter right now. I did before I left, so I can drink it first thing in the morning. And what that does is it lowers your glycemic level, and so you won't be dependent on medication for diabetes if you do that every day. Now, if you're diabetic, don't do okra water and stop taking your medication that your doctor has prescribed. And when in doubt, always check with your doctor. I had my physical today. My blood pressure was 120/60. And this is the second time that my blood pressure was in that range. My blood pressure has not been that low since I was 20, in my 20s, and having my first children. Then I started having high blood pressure and kidney issues. So I know I contribute that to the okra water, the honeys that I use, the honeys with hibiscus. Hibiscus tea lowers blood pressure. In other words, my doctor said, whatever you're doing, keep doing, because you're doing great. Okay? So there are a lot of things that we can do to prevent us from getting diseases or slow down the progression of diseases. And home canning is one of the ways that I'm able to do that, by controlling what's in the jar. Okay?
3 minutes have passed if you want to check your.
Okay, I'm just looking at my note. My stuff was delivered up to my house. Okay, it's coming to a boil now. So you're gonna tell me when it's 15 minutes, or you want me to put a timer on?
I can let you know.
Thank you. I appreciate your help. You've been very helpful. Okay, Dora said, can you tell me this? What is it, Dora?
She said, can you tell me the instructor's name on social media? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I want to follow you too.
Oh, okay. Well, my YouTube channel is Lady Cheryl's Organic Food, Forest, and Products. My website is ladycherylsproducts.com. Now, I don't want to turn this into an advertising thing, but if there aren't any questions, I'll just let you know that I have 40 years experience as a cosmetology educator, owning hair salons, 10 years in a mall, where we did everybody's hair type. I've managed beauty schools, taught at beauty schools, wrote beauty school curriculums, wrote a book in the 90s on hair care. During that time, African Americans were wearing their hair chemically relaxed. So I wrote that book to show them how they could chemically relax their hair and keep it as healthy as it possibly could be. So I have a lot of experience standing up in front of people and lecturing, because that's what I just do for a living, you know? Yeah, so my website is ladycherylsproducts.com, CHERYLS. And my YouTube channel is Lady Cheryl's Organic Food, Forest, and Products. And let me just share with you all, especially I know there are women in the class today. This month, October, is Breast Cancer Awareness. And I want you to know that last July was the anniversary of me surviving breast cancer. I've been breast cancer free for 29 years. God is good. And I had my mammogram yesterday. And I found the lump in my breast myself. It wasn't found through a mammogram. I was just doing the breast exam. You know, I don't have to go into detail. And I felt the lump and immediately went to my gynecologist, who referred me to a doctor, and she tried to aspirate the tumor in the office, and she said we'll have to go in and do a biopsy, but if it is cancerous, can we go ahead and remove the lump, and we'll discuss what we need to do further. And when I woke up, my daughter, who is I think she's about 43 now, she was 15 at the time, and my husband, who's passed away, was standing over me, and the doctor said it was cancer, and I knew it. And she said, we think we got it all. So they sent the pathology report to California, because, you know, years ago, back in those days, people were getting surgeries that they really didn't need. And they're just going by what the doctor said and taking people's breasts off and that type of thing. So that back in the 90s, they had to get a second opinion. So they sent the lab work off to a lab in California, and it showed that the breast tissue around the tumor, which was the size of a pea, a little bitty sweet pea, the tumor had not invaded that tissue. So I didn't have to have a mastectomy. I was one of the first people in North Texas to have the lumpectomy, the radiation, chemotherapy, and lymph node dissection, where they took 16 lymph nodes up under my arm to make sure it had not spread. And the doctor told me I was very lucky. And she looked at me like I was a crazy woman when I said, luck didn't have anything to do with this. God blessed me. And she looked at me like she had a God complex, but I don't care. I know nobody but God that did that for me. So I just want to share that with you. Check your breasts, ladies. Like I said, I had my mammogram yesterday, I had a physical today, and my doctor still did a breast exam even though they did the mammogram. And they didn't find nothing. And I don't even go and be nervous anymore. When I go have a mammogram, it's just something to do. I just, my faith is just that strong. Because if God wanted to take me out, he would took me out 29 years ago. All the years in between. And that's why I'm always giving of my time and my service, trying to help people, because I believe that my life was there for a reason and that I have a purpose in life. So that's why I do the things that I do. And if you say you're in my life, you know a lot of stuff I do in my life I'm not even talking about today. But I just believe in helping people. Okay, is there another question about candy?
Thank you. Yeah.
Since no one's talking, I don't want to take up everybody's time, but I took one of your pressure canning classes. And so,
who am I speaking with?
This is Wanda with Sewing Balance.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm glad you're here.
Yes, ma'am. So I went to your pressure canning classes and we did chicken. Are you going to do like another class where you just do vegetables?
Well, actually, the class that I'm having on October the 10th over Zoom, this Sunday coming, is going to be vegetables.
Oh, is it too late to register?
No. And why don't you just join one of the groups? Join the each your own group. My perk clubs, for the people that don't know, I have 3 lines of membership, and you can take that class free. So go on to any one of my videos, click on that link that says join one of Lady Cheryl's perk clubs, and then email me, let me know you joined, and then I'll put you on the list. That entitles you to go to one class a month free. I'm just amazed people paying for the class when they can just pay for the membership, because they can cancel the membership at any time. Thank you for asking that.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm happy you took advantage of this free class that this library is presenting today. I put it on the Instagram, I put it on my Facebook page, I also put it on the community board YouTube. And I said, hey, free class. You all pay me $30 for classes. You can get this one at the library in New York for free. Uniondale, I believe it is. So I'm glad you took that opportunity and did that. And by the way, I just want to share with you real quick. Here's my lemon honey. Just happened to be on the counter. And my chocolate honey, my grandkids love those too. And we make those, I make organic, unfiltered honey with organic ingredients that I grow in my food boards, most of them. Okay, I'm just filling in the gaps because there's not a question. Is there a question?
Well, I'm waiting on my honey to come in the mail. But mine yesterday.
Okay. So I can see the steam. I can hear it boiling. It's boiling good. How many minutes was that?
You have 7 minutes left.
And what is the
15
time?
minutes. It is now 7:54, so it would have been done at 8:01.
So we're supposed to be done here by 8:30, at least, before
Yes,
or
ma'am.
around. Okay, just want to make sure we're good on time. Now, let me just talk about a few more things about the candy. After you have completed your processing time, you can take your jars, and if you have a granite countertop like this, you can just put it on the countertop. If you have a different type of countertop, you can put a cutting board down or a dish towel. And for demonstration purposes, I'm going to take a dish towel and I'm going to put it here. Let me see. Can you all see right here next to the toaster? Can you see right here?
Yes.
It's far away, but we there.
But you'll be able to see it because I don't want to be walking a long distance with boiling water in that jar. So usually I try to make it right there by the stove. And maybe I'll put one here so that you can see it. So when you take your jars out you want to make sure that they don't touch when you put them on your counter, your cutting board, or your dishcloth. You do not want them to touch. And another thing that you're going to do, you're going to take a dishcloth and you're going to put it on top of the jars to hold in the heat. And for pints, you need to not disturb them for 12 hours. For quarts, you won't disturb them for 24 hours. Now, I had a young lady who kept telling me that her lids weren't sealing. They looked like they were sealing, but the next morning she would get up, and if anybody in here been in my class, you probably heard me tell this story before. The jars would be loose and the lids wouldn't be sealed. And finally, her husband admitted to her that he was going inside of the jars, messing with them. So if you have any little children, or you have a husband who's real curious, a family member, tell them, leave your jars alone. They must be left undisturbed. And once that period of 12 hours for pints or 24 hours for quarts is over, that time is over, it'll be at that point that you will take your rings off your lids and you're going to turn them upside down. And I can't show you because this is not sealed. And you will make sure that it's not leaking without the ring. Okay? And so if it's leaking, then you know you have a false seal. You'll put that one in the refrigerator and you'll eat that one up, whatever it is. It'll be good in the refrigerator for 10 days. A week to 10 days. Now, if you checked all your jars and you turned them upside down and they're not leaking, it'll be at this point that you will wash them off, because sometimes when you're going through the boiling process, whether it is pressure canning or water bath canning, some of the liquid will escape from the lid before it seals. So if you're working with something that's real sugary, if you're water bath canning, you don't want sugar all around your jars. So you want to wash them off. If you're working with something like chili and you are pressure canning, you don't want any grease all around your jars. This attracts ants and, other things. And you just want to make sure that you wash them off real good. And then it'll be at this point, if you are a person that likes to label things, that you can label your jars. But as for me, I just put the month and the date of the year, month and the year on the lid. And I know what's in the jar. Unless it's something I specifically make that's hot. Okay? Are there any questions for what you do after you remove the jars from the canner?
After you turn it upside down to ensure that with the ring off, to ensure that it's sealed.
No, with the ring off.
Yes, with the ring off. And then once you can determine that it's not leaking with the ring off, and then you're washing it, are you putting the ring back on to store it, or are you done with the ring?
No, you don't need to store it with the ring. And that's a good question. Thank you for asking it. The reason why you want to store this without the ring is so that periodically, when you're taking inventory in your pantry, you want to bring all of the food that is the oldest to the front, so you can eat that first. And you want to make sure that the seal is still holding. But if you have the ring on the lid, you're giving yourself a false seal. So you want to be able to pick up the jar without the lid, turn it over, look and see if it's leaking. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
Another thing is, when you're putting your jars in your pantry, now here's one, let's say it didn't seal. You can take, and I get these on Amazon, they have them on Walmart, and it has, a ring around, a little rubber ring. You can take this pour the liquid off an inch below this lip right here, because you can freeze it. And the reason why you have to pour the liquid off an inch, because it will expand. I think I talked about this. It might have been last night in my live chat.
15
Or it
minutes.
might have been. Go ahead.
This is your 15-minute reminder. It's time to check your
Okay, thank you. So it'll be at this point, guys, that you can just turn your stove off and go to bed. Or, because you can unload the canner the next day. Or, you can do what I'm going to do. And I'm going to lift the jars up. Everybody see that? See that on the outside? It makes it very easy for me to remove them. Now I'm going to take one out and I'm going to bring it over here so you can see. You take the wood part of the jar gripper. It goes in your hand. It's all about your wrist. And you're going to put that jar like so. And remember, don't be nervous, because it will cling to it, because the hot water is going to assist you. So we're going to take one out. Squeeze real good. Isn't that pretty? I'll take another one. Make sure that they are not touching. And then, let's just say all of this was covered over here. You put your dishcloth on top. And you'll start hearing them ping. Sometimes they don't ping right away. Sometimes they ping in the middle of the night. But I hope you hear one. Now you see how that helps that from going over? I don't know if you can see this, but this is tipping over. That's why I like this wire rack. Okay, so they're all out. And then the towel goes over it. It will absorb the water. And they are going to seal. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's it. That's how you water bath can.
Miss Cheryl, may I ask a question?
Sure.
Okay. I attempted to can, right? And I have a situation where it called for adding, you put your item in and then it called for adding the liquid to the jar. I did the canning. It sealed beautifully. It went bing. It was wonderful. However, I had so much.
Were you water bath canning or pressure canning?
I was actually pressure canning.
Yeah, pressure canning, it'll seal quicker. Go ahead.
But now with that one, I had so much seepage. I think I have maybe, if I have 2 inches of liquid left in that jar, I'm lucky.
It's okay.
Okay.
It's still okay. Because as long as it seals, that's all that it matters. It's easy, and I think I might have said this already, to have more seepage when you're building up that pressure. Because in pressure canning, you're putting a weight on it. And it's ergonomically designed for it to go whoo, and sanitize everything and then come back down as you lower the pressure. From that, you know, I'm talking about the gear gauge. When it goes to 0. So it's going to, and the heavier the content in the jar when you're pressure canning, the more seepage you're going to get. And I'll tell you what I get the most seepage with. Soups that are heavy, like a stew, and anything that has meat in it. You'll get that seepage, but it's okay as long as it seals. And you can hear the sealing, you can hear the ping or the pop while they're in the pressure canner. The water bath canning is a little bit different because you don't have that pressure built up, but it will still seal.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
There's so many mason jar manufacturers now. Are they all created equal?
No.
No.
Thank you for asking that.
Yeah.
Balls Care, Golden Harvest is pretty good, or very good. But I think the best jars are Balls and Care, and the best lids are Balls, which is Care now, because they merged, they bought them out. And during the pandemic, a lot of people started canning food for the first time to be self-sufficient and self-reliant. And you always have, during an emergency situation, you have money-hungry people that will price gouge and charge exorbitant fees for canners. At one point, about a year ago, you couldn't get your hands on a water bath canner or a pressure canner. You couldn't get your hands on jars and lids. And in some parts of the country, you still can't get lids. Where I live, you can't hardly get them from the major stores like Ace Hardware, Target, Walmart. The merchants on eBay and Amazon are charging astronomical prices. And then you have a lot of merchants that are selling lids and rings pretending that they're balls, and they are not. So if you purchase something like that from an independent merchant, make sure that that particular item is returnable. So in the event that you get something like a friend of mine did, that they took the box made in China and put another label on top of it and sold them faulty lids that buckled and didn't seal the way they should have. So I was blessed. Before the pandemic started, I was just happened to be on Amazon one day, and a merchant on there was selling 100 of the wide mouth lids, and that's something I need to talk about. So this is a mason jar. This is a regular mouth. See how small it is? As opposed to this one is a wide mouth. So you have an option of getting a regular mouth. This is a regular mouth, or a wide mouth. And I like to use wide mouths for fruit, soups, and meats, so I can pack it, really get it in there. Liquids like tomato juice, small blueberries, strawberries. I don't particularly care about it being a wide mouth jar. I can pack that pretty good in a regular mouth jar. But getting back to what I was saying about the merchant on Amazon, they opened up a restaurant and they were using the mason jars to serve their beverages. So they didn't need the rings or the lids. And they were selling 100 of them for, I think it was $20. The wide ones and the regular mouth. So I jumped on it and I got both of them. And then the pandemic hit and the people marked that price up to like twice as much. And then some people started selling the real cheap lids, flimsy lids, having them manufactured in China when they and concealing that on the box. But Amazon is really good about allowing you to return merchandise. You just have to read and see if it's returnable. Okay? Any more questions? Are you guys still there?
Yes, ma'am. We're listening.
Okay. So how many people in this class have never water bath canned before?
Yes, ma'am.
Have never.
I have never. My mom always did.
Never.
I love it.
All right. Now, who hasn't canned before, but they think they will do it now?
Me.
Me.
Good. That's what I want to hear. And I want you all to know there are a lot of groups on Facebook that offer advice about canning, but you have to be careful because there are some rebel groups where, years ago, like Little House on the Prairie days, they didn't have pressure canners. So they literally would water bath can everything, even meat. But what they did was, on those old wood stoves, they would have a pot always sitting to the side with boiling water where they kept filling it every time the water would go down. For example, they'll boil meat for about 3 hours. And that's how they canned back in those days. So there are some people on Facebook that still can that way. They refuse to move with the times and pressure can. But I can't even see standing there, keep filling up with boiling water for 3 hours when I can pressure can a quarter meat for 90 minutes. Set my timer and go. And another thing I want to tell you guys, they have a lot of electric pressure canners now. Presto makes one, and they have Instant Pots that do several things. I'm not going to recommend those because I've never used them, but I'm not going to say you shouldn't use them either. Because I have some friends that are using, when I say friends, these are like family members that I've met on YouTube, and they follow me and I follow them, and they're using steam canning for jelly and fruit. And you can buy those on Amazon and other places. And one dear lady that I admire a lot, she bought the electric pressure canner. But after she bought it, she went back and bought the All-American canner, which I consider the Cadillac of the canners. And let me share something with you about these canners. If you're like me and you're a senior citizen, don't pick this all up and take it over to the sink and pour it out, because after a while your back is going to hurt. So what I do is I take this out, and I take a pot with a handle and I just dip it out. And I do that when it's cooled off, okay? And then I just pour it out like that. And then once I get almost all of the water out, then I will pick it up and take the remainder and pour it out in the sink. Because if you can it all day long and you keep picking up that hot pot and starting over and over again, it will wear down on your muscles, your back, and your knees. And those of you that are real young right now, you may think that that's something you don't have to worry about, but eventually you will. Come on. It's my granddaughter. You want to say hi, everybody?
Hi.
Bria is always in my gardening videos when I feature children in my videos. Say bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you, Bria. Okay, guys. Oh, thank you. Somebody said you're beautiful, Bria. She said thank you. What you looking for? Toy, I put it right down there on the hallway, on the floor right there. Turn around, look. Right down there. No, Bria, come here. Right here. Is there a question?
It's not a question, it's a statement.
Yes.
I attended your class last time. You did one with the library where you gave us, it was an informational on the differences between water bath canning and pressure canning. And I was nervous about cooking an item that had multiple vegetables in it.
Yes.
And you encouraged me to go ahead and go for it and cook it for the time. Whatever one of those items that went in the can, whichever vegetable had the longest cooking time, cook it for that time. And that seemed to work beautifully. And it came out amazing.
I do, like when I'm making vegetable soup without any meat, just a lot of herbs and seasoning. Just look up the time for the longest processing time for any of the ingredients in there and go for that. And I like to do it raw, really. So that way it won't be so mushy. You know, so like when I'm doing greens and I'm pressure canning greens, I just saute them a little bit enough to get them kind of limp, and so I can put them into the jars and then process them for the appropriate amount of time because it's going to have meat in it, so it has to be pressure canned for 90 minutes, and that way you won't have mush.
Okay, thank you for saying that. So now with my collards, because you know that's the dream of mine.
Yes.
Canning my collards. You actually go ahead and you cook them down like a little bit, almost like a, what do they call that when you put them in the hot water and put them in the cold water kind of thing?
Kind of like blanching.
Yeah, like a blanching.
Blanching, yeah. But I do a little bit more than blanching. I cook them just a little bit more. And then if I want my meat to fall off the bone, I'll pre-cook the meat and then I'll put it into the greens. So it just depends on what you cook. Let me give you an example. I canned dry lima beans. My last canning video I put out last week. A friend of mine found the beans on sale for $1 a bag. And she bought me 3 bags. And she had previously bought me a small ham that was on sale for $3. So what I did was I cut that ham up because it was thoroughly cooked. It was cubed and smoked. So it was thoroughly cooked. So I chopped it up and put it in baggies. So when I soaked the lima beans for only a cup and a half of water, they were swollen just a little bit. So actually they were raw packed, and the meat was already cooked because it was ham. So I just raw packed everything with the cooked meat, and then I processed it for 90 minutes, and they came out perfect. Because you have to be careful, because if you put beans in that's already cooked and then with meat and then process it for 90 minutes, you'll end up with bean soup.
Yes.
So be careful. Now this week I'm going to make 2 videos on canning. One is going to be the one I told you guys about with the turkey, ground turkey, and the tomatoes that I grew during the summer. And then the other one is going to be green beans that I blanched and put into the freezer, and I'm going to raw pack them and put meat in them as well. Now, there are a couple things that you can blanch. There's a couple things you don't have to ever blanch when you put them in the freezer. And those 3 things are onions, peppers, and tomatoes. Okay? So if you live in a hot climate like I do, and I harvest all of my tomatoes by the 2nd week of June, because I know that once temperatures reach 100 degrees, they don't do well. And because I have a lot of fruit trees, I don't waste my real estate. So I go ahead and harvest all of my tomatoes. I put them in the freezer. And now that it's finally cooled off, those tomatoes that were in the freezer that weren't blanched are in my refrigerator. And I checked them before I left, and they're still solid. And I took them out yesterday. They're still solid. So I'm bringing that up for a reason. Don't take your food out of the freezer and put it in the sink or on the counter, because it'll thaw out too fast. Put it in the refrigerator until you're ready to use them. Okay? I hope somebody was helped with something I just said.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Good to know.
Okay.
They look so pretty.
Aren't they pretty? They really look pretty when they're on the shelf.
Very pretty.
Very pretty. Let me give you a hypothetical. Let's say 6 of these jars didn't can. Can you put these back in the canner? It's still hot. No. You would have to take the rims off, take the lid off, re-clean the lid, reheat it up again, wipe off the lid again with your vinegar, right? For sanitation purposes. Put the clean lid back on, process them again. But don't just take them like this, put them in the canner and process them. You won't get that suction, that vacuuming Does that make sense?
Yes, I have a question. Could you reuse that lid, or would you need to use a whole new lid?
Yes, you can reuse the lid.
Okay.
If it's pressure can, I would not.
Even if it didn't seal and you're going to redo the whole process, you use a completely new lid.
Pressure can.
Okay.
I'm just saying I wouldn't take that chance.
Okay. Thank you.
Probably could. I'm just giving you my advice.
Okay.
There's no wrong or right.
Yes.
But once something has gone through the pressure canning process with the gear gauge going from 0 to 11 for your altitude, and then you released it, turned it off, and it went down. If there's something created in there, that suction in there, I just would be afraid that I might get a faulty seal again. So I wouldn't do it. Yeah, I wouldn't do it.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Can I make a request?
Yes.
I know you have talked about removing refined flours and all that stuff, and you've been using almond flour and coconut. Can you make more videos on how to bake and cook with those where it tastes good? Because I've seen some recipes, and they get a lot of stars, but when you make it, it's like, this tastes like cardboard.
I'm not going to tell you, yes, I'll do that when I know I'm not.
Okay.
I'm going to tell you why. I'm going to be honest. Because I make all of my products. It's a one-woman operation.
Oh, okay.
And I'm just too busy.
Okay.
And in order to do that, I would have to give you precise directions and measure it, and I would have to test it. I don't have the time. I was talking to a friend while I just threw my little muffins together, but I couldn't do that for a video. One, I'm a little OCD-ish, and for example, it takes a long time to do that. So people that do that, that's probably all that they do. But I'm doing the Pears clubs, I'm doing the the live chats, I'm doing the classes, and I'm making the products, I'm packing, receiving, shipping. I just don't have the time to do it.
Okay, I understand. Didn't hurt for me to ask.
To the point where I would need to have precision in doing it. I know it wouldn't be fair to you.
Okay.
Because what's going to happen is people are going to ask how many tablespoons, and you say approximately something, And there are some good channels though. I've seen, let's see, Chef Pam, Cooking with Jeff. I don't know if they're doing the natural stuff like I do, the alternative flours. Because the more I started researching this, I found that there's pumpkin seed flour, there is sunflower seed flour. It's not just almond and, coconut. It's a lot. But I hear you when you say you try making them and it doesn't turn out right. Because the first time I tried to make muffins, I tried to wing it with the coconut flour. And because my sister had lost a lot of weight on the keto diet, and she was telling me about it. And so I just started thinking I could whip it together like regular flour. Oh no. Coconut flour is very, very heavy, and it was a mess.
Right.
So I had to pull back. So I know what you mean.
Okay.